Chapter 1672. Boom boom boom. Supreme Taser finally became an arrow at the end of its flight. Under the horrified gaze of everyone, the huge body finally tilted at an angle. Is it over? The members of the night raid wiped their sweat and sat down at the same time. Their tense nerves also suddenly calmed down, revealing a trace of joy after surviving the disaster. It was certain that if it weren't for Dustless, they would not be crushed by the huge body of Supreme Taser. As a result, these towns didn't even leave the remains of the body. Usually when it's over, it's not over yet. The roar of the sky was everywhere, spreading to every corner of the void. Looking up, Supreme Taser, who was originally tilted, actually stood up again at an incredible angle. This is the strongest Taigu, such a huge monster. It may be destroyed by one move, especially my move. The Emperor's arrogant tone came from inside Supreme Taser. Buzz buzz buzz. In the big mouth full of fangs, there was a dark red halo again. Is this guy the type that can't be killed? When the members of the night raid saw such a scene, their faces suddenly became as pale as paper, showing fear and panic. The high-density energy ball could easily tear their bodies apart. Do you think you are big? Staring at the huge body with a sneer, Dustless sneered without hiding. If you think your body is big, you will win, you will only lose faster. Buzz buzz buzz. Suddenly, the golden energy rushed out from Dustless's body, rising to an exaggerated height of hundreds of meters. A ferocious outline stood between the sky and the earth. The head held up the sky and the feet stepped on the ground, representing everything in the world. This guy, is this his true face? Death looked numb. She thought that the invincible figure of Supreme Taser was enough to cheat. Who knew that Dustless showed his original appearance in an instant? A samurai wearing a Tengu helmet and heavy armor suddenly appeared out of thin air like a natural disaster. This is Liu. Everyone stared at the golden giant with their mouths agape. The giant was over 100 meters tall and was much taller than Taisei. If one wanted to see the full appearance of this giant, they would have to look up at the starry sky at a 90-degree angle. Damn it, this guy was indeed sent by the heavens to harm the Empire. He can't be allowed to live. The others are just insignificant characters. The Emperor inside Supreme Taser cursed. That exaggerated body was even more terrifying than his Supreme Taser. Supreme Taser's height only reached the waist of the complete Kansusunu. It's over, Dustless murmured inside Kansusunu's complete body. He used his mind to control Kansusunu's movements. Clang 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 clang, the golden greatsword was pulled out of its scabbard. Glaring at Supreme Taser, complete form Kansusunu raised the tachi of light with both hands, and finally slashed down under Dustless's control. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. An invincible shock wave emerged. The moment it appeared, the imperial city was split into two by that invincible sharpness. Shocking cracks also appeared on the ground. You want to destroy my empire? Don't even think about it. I will never allow it. The Emperor obviously didn't give up. The thick light in Supreme Taser's mouth was also shot out in the end. Boom boom boom. The power of these two destructive moves was unimaginably strong. Everywhere they passed, everything was reduced to ruins. Crack. However, it was obvious that the complete form Kansusunu's power was stronger. The sharp wind from the blade pierced through the huge light and tore it apart effortlessly. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Under the Emperor's desperate gaze, the hurricane that didn't slow down swept toward Supreme Taser, who was already a fish on the chopping board. The outer armor was already showing signs of collapsing. Boom boom boom. Under the direct attack of the complete form Kansusunu, the mere Supreme Taser immediately collapsed. It showed its weak side that no one knew about. It was killed by the overwhelming power. Not even a corpse was left behind. It was directly slashed apart by the blade, turning into wreckage and various parts that filled the sky. Pucci. The emperor's entire body was slashed into pieces by the sharpness, turning into a pool of blood and a large amount of broken bones. It's finally over, right? After removing the exaggerated body of the complete form Kansusanu, Dustless landed on the ground again. When he raised his head again, he found that everyone's eyes had changed. This is. You can treat me as a messenger of justice sent by the heavens to punish the empire. If he said that he was a human, perhaps no one would believe him anymore. This unparalleled power was not something that a human could control. Especially the absolute power of the complete form Kansusanu. It shocked everyone, leaving an indelible impression in everyone's mind and soul. It's almost time to retreat. All the problems have been solved. Looking up at the sky, Dustless looked at the blue void, not hiding his fascination and anticipation. Speaking of which, where are Lubbock and Susanu? Looking around, Dustless found that only the two of them were missing. The rest were all there. Just now, the two of them were blown away by the light of the supreme taser. Not even their bones were left. Akame lowered her head and answered. Even though she already had the resolve to be an assassin, she still felt a sense of loss. It was normal for the fish in the moat to be implicated in a fight between two monsters that were dozens of meters tall. The fact that Susanu and Lubbock were killed could only mean that the two of them were unlucky. This is fate that can't be changed. Dustless shook his head. The emperor was dead, and the empire had collapsed. Everything was over. The fulfillment of this world had also come to an end. It was deep and gloomy, and on the other side, it was connected to the bottomless universe. What is this? It doesn't look like a spatial tunnel. Dustless frowned. After transmigrating several times, he had gained a new understanding of space tunnels. Although he wasn't too familiar with them, he still had some understanding of them. This bottomless black hole in front of him was clearly not a space tunnel, but rather an inexplicable contract. Is this the thing Ling was talking about? I feel like something is calling out to me. Dustless was at a loss as he felt the pulling force of the black hole. After a final moment of hesitation, he took the initiative and jumped in. He could also hear strange incantations. Master and servant. What the hell is that? Why does it sound so familiar? In the unfamiliar dark space, Dustless thought to himself. Before entering the black hole, he heard strange words like master and servant. Buzz buzz buzz, in the dead silent space, a bright light suddenly swept across. Dustless looked over and carefully felt the special energy fluctuation for a while. After confirming that it wasn't a trap, he finally jumped in without hesitation. How is this possible? The Holy Grail War was only a battle between 7 masters and 7 servants. Why would an 8th master and an 8th servant appear now? This is absolutely impossible. As soon as he arrived in an unfamiliar world, there were shocked voices. At the same time, Dustless also understood where he had arrived. He immediately revealed a knowing smile. Dustless opened his eyes subconsciously, and 3 figures suddenly appeared in front of him. Wei Gong Chi-si. This scum is definitely not my master. After glancing at the middle-aged man, Dustless's eyes fell on the 2 female figures next to him. One of them was a white woman, and the other was a blonde girl. Both of them were young, and their appearances were superb. It seems to be King Arthur and Alice Phil. It seems that she is my master. His eyes fell on Alice Phil's head, and Dustless looked at the command incantation in her hand and suddenly realized. Ahem. Miss, I am your servant, and you are my master. Dustless said in a very serious tone. He felt helpless. He didn't understand the so-called incantation at all. And the so-called command incantation seemed to be just for show. It couldn't control Dustless at all. Miss? Listening to Dustless's address, Wei Gong Chi-si and Alice Phil were speechless. Aren't hero spirits all ancient people? Since when were ancient people so fashionable? Also, what's with Dustless's clothes? He was wearing casual clothes and sports shoes. The combination was quite reasonable, and he looked very avant-garde. He was even more fashionable than the people in today's society. He didn't look like an ancient person at all. There's something weird about this guy. Saber looked at Dustless strangely. She couldn't tell what was weird about him. Forget it, we have 2 servants here. We have an absolute advantage compared to other masters who are weak. Chapter 1674. Saber was overjoyed, and a blissful smile appeared on her face. Although she did not know how the 8th master and servant appeared, the benefits were definitely greater than the disadvantages. After all, Wei Gong Qixi was Alice Phil's husband, so there was no doubt that Dustless was also an ally in the trenches. This way, their chances of winning would be much higher. After staring at Dustless for a while, Wei Gong Qixi frowned and asked, "That's strange. What, holy relic, did you use to summon this guy?" "You mean the holy relic?" Alice Phil could not help but smile bitterly. Who knew how Dustless appeared? She did not even chant a spell, nor did she prepare a magic circle. However, a command spell appeared in her hand out of nowhere, and Dustless, this mysterious guest, also appeared as a servant. Holy relic, Dustless also had a headache. Looking at Wei Gong Qixi's questioning eyes, he was speechless for a moment. Then, he waved his hand and said impatiently, "A handsome servant does not need a holy relic." Ha! The 3 of them were stunned as they stared at Dustless. This was the first time they encountered such a strange heroic spirit. "Is there something wrong with your head? Or did something go wrong during the summoning ritual?" Saber complained. She was quite dissatisfied with Dustless. Wasn't he mocking the servant that needed to be summoned? Although I don't know what's going on, one thing is for sure. In this Holy Grail war, our advantage is far greater than our disadvantage. Wei Gong Qixi could not figure it out. There were too many unsolved mysteries in this world. If he could not figure it out, then he could only muddle through. "What is your position?" Alice Phil blinked and asked curiously. "Position?" Dustless complained. He was just an intruder who came in halfway. To put it bluntly, he was an illegal immigrant. Where could he find a proper account for himself? Naturally, there was no such thing as a position. Dustless lowered his head and pondered for a moment. Then, his eyes lit up and he replied loudly, "My job is END. Let's get along harmoniously in the future." End. Saber, Wei Gong Qixi, and Alice Phil looked at each other. This position meant the end of everything. Forget it, there's no need to worry about such trivial matters. The location of the Holy Grail War, this time is Dongmu City. The few of us will rush over tomorrow. But I've only booked 3 tickets at the moment. Wei Gong Qixi revealed an apologetic expression. The 3 of them were himself, Saber, Alice and Phil. "Don't worry, I can fly over." Dustless smiled and said politely. Even though he didn't like the man in front of him, he still had to follow basic etiquette. "It can fly." Saber, Wei Gong Qixi, and Alice Phil were shocked. A spirit that could fly. Was that still a heroic spirit? He had never heard of heroic spirits being able to fly. There's nothing to be surprised about. Compared to Saber, I can't be more ordinary. With a modest smile on his face, Dustless said calmly. "In that case, let's have a good night's rest. We'll rush to Dongmu City tomorrow." On the plane the next day, Wei Gong Qixi, Alice, Phil, and Saber boarded the plane together. Only Dustless set off alone, feeling bored. But before leaving, Wei Gong Qixi asked Dustless to bring along a person, Juyu Meimi. This person was saved by Wei Gong Qixi once when she was young, and they were like childhood friends. "Miss Mamie, it's the first time we meet, please take care of me." Dustless elegantly extended his right arm with an imperceptible smile on his face. "You, get along well." Seeing Dustless's action, Joyu Mamie was stunned. How is this a heroic spirit? He's no different from a modern person, not like an old-fashioned heroic spirit at all. "Let's go." Staring at the plane taking off in the distance, Dustless suddenly reached out and hugged Joyu Mamie. "What are you doing? Let go of me. A heroic spirit is so lascivious, you're a weirdo." Joyu Mamie, who was in a trance for a moment, snapped back to reality. "Let go." Dustless ignored it when he heard that and retorted with a question, "If I let go of you, how can I bring you along to fly together? Don't tell me you want to hug me. In that case, of course, it's fine, but the premise is that you don't think that I'm taking advantage of you." Joyu Mamie was dumbfounded. She was speechless by Dustless's words. She could only be silent and let Dustless hug her snake-like waist. Joyu Mamie's face was slightly red, and then she remembered the task that Wei Gong Qixi gave her and returned to normal. This guy can really fly. Looking down at the sky below, Joyu Mamie's eyes were in a daze. The charming scenery was panoramic. She was a little obsessed for a moment, and her mind was blank. "Don't call me, guy, I'm a heroic spirit. You can call my job title END, but compared to the so-called job title, I prefer you to call me by my name, Dustless." Staring at the large passenger plane in front, Dustless explained in a rather bored manner. "Dustless. I understand, but you're really a strange heroic spirit," Joyu Mamie whispered. Although her voice was very soft, Dustless still heard it clearly. It just so happened that right at this moment, Wu Chen's sudden words caused her expression to go grim. Chapter 1675. Miss Joyu Mommy. "Anyway, we still have a long time, let me guess your motive." The bored Dustless smiled and looked at Joyu Mommy. He ignored her expression and said to himself, logically speaking, you should have known that the Holy Grail War would be held in Dongmu City, and you should have already booked the tickets. You are Wei Gong Qixi's assistant, and that guy is very smart. It is impossible for him to forget to book the tickets for you. Then, there is only one possibility. Ignoring Joyu Mommy's stunned expression, Dustless continued to analyze. "If you are with me, it is just to test my ability, right? If you think that I am useless, I guess you will set a trap to lure other servants to kill me, and you and Wei Gong Qixi will ambush the other party's master, right? What a cunning and smart vile man," Dustless explained to himself. His expression was calm, as if what he said was just a small matter. In fact, Dustless hated Wei Gong Qixi very much. He was extremely despicable. Of course, Dustless also belonged to the despicable and shameless type. He was not qualified to criticize others, but there should be a bottom line for everything. For the so-called justice, he used his own wife as bait and let Alice Phil pretend to be Saber's master to lure other masters to kill him. Who else could be so despicable? For the sake of justice, he actually used his own wife as bait. At this moment, Dustless suddenly felt that his head was cold. He turned his head and saw a black pistol aimed at his head. "You have such an intense behavior, which means that my previous guess was true." Gently shaking his head, Dustless felt that Joyu Mommy and Alice Phil were not worth it. They were sacrificed for that scum Wei Gong Qixi. "Who are you?" Joyu Mommy's eyes were cold, and her tone was unfriendly. Pointing a gun at a heroic spirit. "You are playing with fire," Dustless replied indifferently as he looked at the void in front of him. "I just want to tell you that if you and Wei Gong Qixi have any unrealistic plans or plans against me, you better give up as soon as possible. We are now allies in the same trench. I am also very interested in the Holy Grail. Moreover, you're just a mere human. Don't you think you're too naive and laughable to scheme against a heroic spirit? Dustless sneered coldly. Don't you dare look down on humans, Takumi Joyu snorted in dissatisfaction. Besides, no matter how powerful or special you are, you're still just a human when you're alive. This guy is really ignorant. Dustless could not help but laugh when he heard that. So this guy actually thought that he was dead. However, most heroic spirits were like that. They were all summoned to participate in the Holy Grail War. Not everyone was as cheat-like as Dustless. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, a series of sonic booms suddenly sounded in front of them. The mysterious object's tail was covered in flames, and it directly blasted towards the flying plane. It didn't matter that Dustless did not recognize it, but Takumi Joyu, who was often in contact with firearms, was shocked. She said in panic, "Oh no, that thing is a cruise missile." Cruise missile. Hearing that, Dustless's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise, and then he frowned. This kind of thing was naturally useless against him. Not to mention a cruise missile, even if an atomic bomb came, it would be useless. With Saber's strength, she would probably be fine. However, whether or not Wei Gong Qixi and Alice Phil would be spared was a question mark. Boom boom boom. The speed of the missile was beyond imagination. When Dustless was about to intercept it, the flying plane was attacked by the missile and instantly exploded into a pile of fire. Qixi! Takumi Joyu shouted nervously and worriedly. The first thing she was worried about was not Saber and Alice Phil. It was enough to prove that the relationship between the two was extraordinary. "I'm fine." Through his perverted vision, Dustless saw that in the explosion of the fire, the three of them were fine. It's normal for Alice Phil to be fine with Saber's protection, but why is Wei Gong Qixi safe and sound? That light, could it be the sheath of the holy sword, Avalon? Dustless thought to himself. He saw that Wei Gong Qixi's body was flowing with holy light. He was not injured, but the passengers on the plane could not escape the nightmare. They were all killed by the cruise missile. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Although their lives were saved, because they were in the sky, the three of them quickly fell down. Wan Xiang Tianing. His left arm erupted with a strong gravitational force, and the three people who fell to the sea were forcibly absorbed by Dustless. Such a convenient ability, not bad. Floating around Dustless, Saber and the other two were relieved. They stared at Dustless nervously, afraid that this guy would be distracted and throw them down. Although I don't know what happened, one thing is certain, it should be the other masters who attacked us. Dustless analyzed seriously and looked at Wei Gong Qixi with a strained expression. He said with difficulty, "My gravitational control is average, I can only support 2 people flying." Sigh. "It's all my fault for being useless, I'm really sorry. How about this, Wei Gong Qixi, I'll temporarily put you on the Pacific Ocean and leave with Saber and Alice Phil first. You can swim to Dongmu City by yourself, how about that?" This guy. Wei Gong Qixi was furious when he heard that. "This is the center of the Pacific Ocean, you want me to swim to Japan?" This vulgar and low-level joke was simply too bad. Chapter 1676. Swimming from the Pacific Ocean to Japan. Are you out of your mind? Before Kamiya Kazi could refute, Kuyumamiya yelled, "That's impossible. No human in this world can swim from the Pacific Ocean to Japan. TSK, I'm just a special case. Although I'm using my flying ability." Dustless smiled and teased, "All in all, I can only carry 3 people at most, Saber, Alice, Faye, and you. As for the others, I'm sorry, I can't help." "Is that so? Then you can take the 3 of them and leave." Kamiya Kazi sighed and waved his hand, "I'll call a ship. When we reach Dongmu City, you must be careful, especially Yen Feng Qili. You must pay attention to him. I suspect that the cruise missile incident was done by that guy. I have a very dangerous feeling. That guy will be the strongest enemy we'll ever meet. No matter what, he's just a human. Dustless pursed his lips. Yen Feng Chili was indeed dangerous when humans fought against humans. However, if he was caught by a hero spirit, he would be nothing more than an ant. Where's the person who attacked us? Saber widened her eyes and wiped her mouth. She carefully looked down at the large number of uninhabited islands in the sea below. She could not find where the person who attacked them was hiding. There are too many scattered islands. Saber smiled apologetically. Although she was a hero spirit, she was not a god. She could not find a person on the ground hundreds of meters away or even 1,000 meters in the air. Leave it to me. Dustless smiled and said, as long as all these islands are sunk, no matter if it's master or servant, they won't be able to escape. Caw caw caw. As soon as he finished speaking, a high-density energy ball appeared in front of Dustless's thumb. As the force was too strong, the surrounding void was distorted and collapsed. Who ordered you to use your noble phantasm? Kamiya Kazi shouted angrily. Noble phantasm. Dustless glanced at Kamiya Kazi and said coldly, if this is a noble phantasm, then I have too many of them. Wang Su's flash. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. With a flick of his finger, the energy ball shot out towards the scattered islands on the ground. Boom boom boom. The calm sea surface trembled, and waves that were dozens of meters high splashed. Then the scattered islands in an extremely simple manner. Golo. Saber couldn't help but be stunned when she saw the exaggerated range of the attack. Even with such a large distance, it was still able to raise an island hundreds of meters away to the ground. The power of the attack was self-evident. No matter what, as long as there are masters and servants on this island, they're all dead meat. Wu Chen's narration was as light as a breeze. It was as if he had done something like eating and drinking water. It was unbelievably calm. Bastard! Wei Gong Qixi, who regained his senses, was enraged. He glared at Wu Chen. He always felt that this rascal was always going against him. He lowered his head and said helplessly, Saber, with all due respect, you don't seem to understand the nature of the Holy Grail War. Dustless, do you think I'm an ignorant little girl? How can I not understand this kind of thing? Saber pouted and complained unhappily. She felt that her intelligence was being insulted by Dustless. The so-called Holy Grail War was actually 7 sorcerers and their heroic spirits fighting against each other. The end result was also quite simple. The winner was king. No, you misunderstood me. Dustless shook his head when he heard that. His eyes shone brightly as he explained, the reason why you joined the Holy Grail War this time should be because of the universal wishing machine, the Holy Grail, right? To be honest, I'm actually here for it as well. However, everyone seems to have gotten one thing wrong. Aren't all the Servant and Satyr doing this for the same purpose? Saber nodded affirmatively. No, everyone has made a mistake. The so-called Holy Grail can only fulfill one person's wish, and us candidates, including all the masters and Servant, have a total of 14 people. No, after including myself and Alice Phil, the total number of candidates added up to 16. Dustless raised his voice and said meaningfully, even if you defeat everyone in the end, do you think Wei Gong Keisai will give the Holy Grail to you? This. Keisai will probably give the Holy Grail to me. Saber lowered her head in uncertainty. Who knows what choice Wei Gong Keisai will make in the end? Saber, I can tell you clearly. If you win and defeat all the masters and Servant, then Wei Gong Keisai will probably use the command spell to make you commit suicide. This way, the Holy Grail will be his alone. That guy has an extremely naive dream. He wants to eliminate all evil in this world. This is simply a fool's dream. Such a thing is impossible. Where there are people, there will be conflict. This is fated. Unless that guy wipes out all of humanity, then there will only be justice left in this world. Dustless's tone was filled with a bewitching charm. Every word he said was like a gem to Saber. It was very convincing. After all, these were undeniable facts. In the original work, Inaka Toshimi had actually planned to do so. After the hero king killed all the heroic spirits, Inaka Toshimi would use the command spell to order Gilgamesh to commit suicide. His method was very sinister. How would you know such a thing? Saber stared at Dustless with a face full of questions. About this, Dustless felt a headache coming on. He couldn't possibly say that he had transmigrated, right? He could only make up a reason to fool Saber. You immature fledglings do not understand the truth. I have participated in 3 Holy Grail wars. No. Including this Holy Grail war, I have participated in 4 Holy Grail wars. In the past, I had helped the masters defeat all their enemies. However, those 3 shameless masters used the command spell to order me to commit suicide. Chapter 1678. Saber was stunned when she heard that. She stared at Dustless and fixed her gaze on him. She could not move anymore. She did not expect Dustless to have such a torturous experience. I don't think Ji-Shi is that kind of person. After hesitating for a while, Saber finally chose to believe Ji-Shi. It's hard to know what's in a person's heart. Most of my previous masters were cunning and despicable anyway, Dustless said nonchalantly. He knew that his plan to trick Saber into betraying him had failed. If it was a Shinobi like Gilgamesh, he might have been able to trick her into betraying Toshimi Nagasaka. No. In the original work, Gilgamesh betrayed Toshimi Nagasaka and joined Yen Feng Chili. However, Saber was different. It was impossible for her to be as unprincipled as Gilgamesh. She deeply believed in the spirit of chivalry and viewed traitors as disgraceful scum. It was unrealistic to think that he would betray Wei Gong Kisi with just a few words. Moreover, even if Saber betrayed Ji-Shi, she did not seem to have a suitable master. At that moment, Dustless suddenly raised his eyebrows. The boredom on his face disappeared and was replaced by excitement. Is there something wrong? Saber asked with a frown. She subconsciously looked at Alice Phil. She and Dustless were both powerful heroic spirits. Naturally, they would not be afraid of other heroic spirits. The only weak one was Alice Phil, who was her master. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. He looked at Alice Phil. As expected, a black shadow was rushing toward them. How despicable. Saber snorted angrily. She quickly swooped down with her sword. His aura is hidden very well. It's almost impossible to catch him. Moreover, this Sarvant is a new face. Could he be an assassin who specializes in assassination? He has a lot of doppelgangers. His methods are despicable, but he's smart. He knows that it's not me and Saber, so he's actively looking for weaker prey to attack. Dustless touched his chin. He suddenly thought of a black-bellied priest, Yen Feng Chili. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a few sharp sounds came from behind him. Dustless subconsciously turned his head, and a cold dagger was mercilessly stabbing towards his heart. Shinra Tensei. A powerful repulsive force erupted, and the black shadow that had launched a sneak attack was immediately sent flying. Boom boom boom. The black shadow that was sent flying smashed into the surrounding streets, leaving a long mark on the ground. It seemed to have suffered quite a bit of damage, and there were obvious dents on its body. Is it really assassin? Dustless raised his eyebrows and subconsciously glanced at Saber's opponent, who was also assassin. There seemed to be quite a number of such doppelgangers. Yen Feng Chili. Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly, and a fierce look flashed across his face. Aiming at the wailing black shadow, a cold light flashed from his fingertip and mercilessly shot over. Void flash. The colorful energy ball charged up for a moment before it locked onto Assassin and blasted toward her. Boom boom boom. The powerful flash swept her away, and the streets on both sides were instantly turned into nothingness by the energy released by Void Flash. At the same time, Saber's battle also came to an end. The result was without a doubt, Saber had completely defeated her opponent. This combination is very troublesome, Master. In a secret room somewhere, Yen Feng, Chili, and Toshiomi Inaka sat together. The battle screen in front of them was the scene of Dustless and Saber's battle. Yeah, both of them are pretty strong. That Saber is the strongest job class, and this strange END is also a pretty strong heroic spirit. Toshiomi Inaka nodded solemnly, and couldn't help but feel annoyed. Originally, he and Yen Feng, Chili, and a strong heroic spirit like Gilgamesh had given them the confidence to win this Holy Grail war. Who would have thought that the 8th heroic spirit would suddenly jump out, END Dustless? He had ruined a great victory. Just thinking about it made Toshiomi Inaka feel constipated. Moreover, END Dustless and Saber were bound to be an iron alliance. It couldn't be broken up so easily. After all, their masters were husband and wife. We can also join forces with the other masters. An idea flashed through Yen Feng's mind. He leaned close to Toshiomi Inaka's ear and whispered, "Master, we can totally do that. For example, we can join forces with that guy, Despicable and vile people. Leave that kind of bastard to me alone." At that moment, an extremely arrogant and disdainful voice sounded. A golden flash entered Yen Feng, Chili, and Toshiomi Inaka's eyes. Looking at it carefully, this person was completely golden. He wore golden armor and had short golden hair. His expression was unruly, as arrogant as a god looking down on ants. Where are those two bastards? Tell me, and I'll personally eliminate these two eyesores. Gilgamesh said arrogantly, joining forces with the other heroic spirits is an insult to this king. But, let's see the situation first. Toshiomi Inaka was secretly angry, but facing Gilgamesh, he really couldn't bring out any confidence. He could only nod and agree. In fact, he really wanted to say to Gilgamesh, "You are a super big idiot who doesn't care about anyone else." In fact, at this moment, not only Toshiomi Inaka and Yen Feng, but the other masters and servants were also frowning. In the previous Holy Grail War, such a thing had never happened. Two heroic spirits stood on the same side, while the other heroic spirits were all alone. In comparison, they were at a great disadvantage. Chapter 1679. My King. Why don't we observe for a while? Find out how Saber and the male heroic spirit's noble phantasm are moving. Toshiomi Enosaka's expression was respectful as he lowered his head. He was more respectful than seeing his own father. What you say makes sense, you bastard. This one will listen to your arrangements. I hope this gathering won't make this one feel bored and depressed. Gilgamesh's body lost its texture and turned into a golden light that dissipated. The hero king's ability to put on airs is better than fighting. Yen Feng Chili saw the miserable Toshiomi Enosaka and couldn't help but shake his head. Sometimes, it's not necessarily a good thing for a heroic spirit to be too strong. Toshiomi Enosaka was called a bastard, and he couldn't refute it, but he had to be respectful. You can imagine how depressed Toshiomi Enosaka was. At this time, in another direction, more and more assassin doppelgangers came to attack from all directions. It was obvious that they had been deliberately instructed to attack Alice Phil, who was weaker in terms of strength. 90 Black Coffin. The black light that was enough to cut a mountain flashed out of thin air and cut the assassins in front of them. Even so, there were still many splits. There are too many assassins. Saber's hair was slightly messy, and she was panting, looking tired. Their intention is very simple. They want to force us to use our noble phantasm. Dustless was familiar with Yen Fengqili's intention. I'm afraid that we have been targeted by many heroic spirits. Observation hockey spread out, and the scene within a few hundred meters fell into Dustless's eyes. Oh. The final king Gilgamesh, the conqueror king, and Lancer Dolumido Odina are secretly watching the changes in the battle. Dustless's mouth curled into an imperceptible smile. In the original work, Lancer might have come out to cause trouble at this time. Now that Dustless and Saber were allies, this unexpected change might make him hesitate to attack the rat for fear of breaking the vases. For a moment, he hesitated whether to go to war with Dustless and Saber. Whoosh! Several sharp sounds came into his ears. Dustless looked up and saw more than a dozen noble phantasms pouring down. This dazzling light. Is it the king's treasure? Dustless's face showed a nostalgic look. The ability of Gate of Babylon was not limited to Gilgamesh. But it's really a pity that your opponent is me, Dustless said softly as the spiritual pressure in his body surged, binding Path's 81st step, air severing. In an instant, a transparent barrier appeared in front of Dustless. How dare you try to block this king's light with such a fragile object? You're overestimating yourself. The street lamps suddenly turned black as a stream of light materialized. Standing on it was none other than Hero King Gilgamesh. Bastards who are hiding in the surroundings, come out for this king. Seems like I have been underestimated. Dustless touched his nose in amusement. Without giving Gilgamesh a chance to attack, he turned into a flash and appeared behind him. The light was fleeting, and no one noticed it. They only saw Dustless suddenly vanishing. Speed is power. Have you ever been kicked at the speed of light? Hero King. Chapter 1680. With the speed of light reaching nearly 300,000 kilometers per second, even if a god came, wanting to see Dustless's trajectory clearly was no different from a dream, much less a mere heroic spirit. Who dares to sneak an attack on this king? Upon hearing this contemptuous voice, Hero King Gilgamesh immediately turned his head. However, what struck him in return was a destructive beam of light. It was so blinding that Gilgamesh's eyes were nearly blinded. He hurriedly closed his eyes. Lightspeed kick. Hero King Gilgamesh suddenly felt an excruciating pain in his face, as though his bones were about to break. He was instantly sent flying. This merciless kick had sent Gilgamesh vanishing without a trace. Bam! The land hundreds of meters away suddenly trembled. Only then did everyone see the miserable Gilgamesh lying on the ground half dead. He only had a weak aura left, but he was barely able to survive. He's so fast. I didn't even see how he appeared behind that golden shimmering body. Web Velvet looked as though he had seen a ghost. Idiot. Even I didn't see it, much less a dabbler like you. Conquest King Iskandar punched Webb in the head in a bad mood. His expression was somewhat gloomy. Everyone believed that Dustless was about to be finished off, but who knew that this fellow's tiny universe would erupt, instantly crushing the golden shimmering body. Is that the power of a treasure artifact? Lancer was similarly dumbfounded. He suddenly felt thankful that his enemy was not Dustless, or his outcome would definitely be no different from Gilgamesh's. Furthermore, it wasn't only the Conquest King. In fact, even Lancer did not see how Dustless moved. Bastard, 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 Hero King Gilgamesh touched his cheek. In his rage, he hammered the ground angrily. His right hand was a bloody mess, but he did not feel any pain. Caw 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 caw. Hero King Gilgamesh's heart shattered into sand, forever unable to heal. As he touched his face, a gigantic footprint was imprinted on his face like a birthmark. This was all thanks to Dustless. Wow, you have become a lot more handsome. After carefully scrutinizing Hero King Gilgamesh, Dustless gave him a thumbs up and continued striking him. As expected of a king. That handsome face of yours is definitely unparalleled. Dustless's words attracted everyone's attention. Everyone looked at Hero King Gilgamesh's face in unison as they roared with laughter. Ha ha ha. What's up with that guy? There's actually a shoe print on his face. Coupled with his sullen expression, it's just too exciting. Iskandar the Conquest King laughed so hard that his eyes were watering and his stomach was hurting. It's indeed comical. Lancer wore an odd expression as he stared at the footprint on Hero King Gilgamesh's face. Ha ha ha, well done. It's best if this hateful Hero King is beaten up by others. The enemy was right in front of you, but you did not have the ability to hurt him. Instead, you were being humiliated and ridiculed by your opponent. Was there anything more tragic than this in the world? Hero King Gilgamesh hated Dustless to the core. This rascal had looked down on him for no reason. Now, he had even used sorcery to ignore his attacks. He felt extremely aggrieved. Gilgamesh felt terrible and was about to explode. Chapter 1681. Gilgamesh's face was contorted. It was no wonder he was so furious. He had an extremely conceited temper to begin with. He could not tolerate sand in his eyes. For an ordinary person to look at him directly was the greatest insult to Gilgamesh. Now that Dustless had taught him a lesson, Gilgamesh could no longer tolerate it. Shoo! 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 No matter how he attacked, he was unable to harm Dustless. That calm face was silently mocking Gilgamesh's powerlessness and frailty. I'll stand here and let you hit me. The key is, can you hit me? You have completely infuriated me, bastard. Gilgamesh's face was even more contorted. His scarlet eyeballs protruded outwards as though they could fall out at any moment. He was really about to go berserk. I've never liked to cause trouble, but, Dustless's eyelids lifted slightly as he revealed a cold look. If you insist on courting death, if I don't teach you a lesson, I'll be looking down on you, the Hero King. With just you. This king shall tell you. Before Gilgamesh could finish his words, tragedy struck. Yomi no Miyazaka. Dustless's forehead revealed a scarlet Samsara Sharingan as he appeared behind Gilgamesh without any warning. He delivered another merciless kick. Lightspeed kick. Boom. 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 Gilgamesh's body exploded with flames once again as he was engulfed by the flames. His beautiful golden armor was covered in dust as he was sent retreating by Dustless's kick. He was in a sorry state. Shoo! 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 At this moment, a sharp beam suddenly came from behind and was about to pierce through Dustless's head. Clang! 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 At the critical moment, a black figure blocked the sneak attack with a sword. Like a shield, she defended Dustless's back. The cold beam was also intercepted by Saber. You should thank me, Dustless. The person who came to his rescue was Dustless's ally, Saber. Thank you. Saber, do you think I'll be finished off by a scoundrel? Dustless turned his head slightly and glanced at the person who was fighting with Saber. It was Lancer. I don't think you're the kind of person who would ambush someone. Is this Master's command curse? Dustless lowered his head and fell silent as he stared at Lancer, who was drenched in cold sweat and had a pained expression. Then. I have no choice but to destroy you. Dustless, who had kicked Gilgamesh away, suddenly looked at Lancer's head. His eyes turned cold, and the tip of his thumb was already glowing with a destructive light. This guy is my opponent. Seeing that Dustless was about to intervene, Saber hurriedly shouted to stop him. She exerted force in her arms and instantly forced Lancer to retreat. Then, Saber chased after Lancer and launched a fierce attack. She looks like a woman on the outside, but she's a powerful lion on the inside. Lancer looked at Saber in shock. That powerful force had numbed his arm. You should be able to kill me quickly if you join forces with that guy. Chapter 1682. The veins on Gilgamesh's forehead were bulging. He looked as ferocious as an evil spirit. He felt that his dignity and soul had been trampled on by the despicable guy in front of him. Shoot him through. Gilgamesh, who could not take it anymore, took the lead to attack. Divine weapons fell from the sky like a storm. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Dustless did not show any weakness. He immediately launched a deadly counterattack. The lights that decorated his head were also shot out mercilessly. Clang, 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 clang. Sparks flew everywhere. There were traces of broken steel everywhere. The divine weapons that were shot out by both parties were damaged. Boom, boom, boom. Thousands of relics were shot out consecutively, dazzling everyone. Even Saber and Lancer, as well as the conqueror King Iskandar, were dumbfounded as they watched the scene unfold. All of them were filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. Why do these two perverts have so many relics? Is God blind? It's not fair. The hero's spirits were cursing in their hearts. It was infuriating to compare oneself to others. Damn it, compared to Dustless, Gilgamesh was so angry that he was about to jump up. As the ancient king, the hero king, he was an extremely conceited person. Now that he had been humiliated by Dustless, he was infuriated. Bastard, since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. The blood-red eyeball shot out a violent aura. A huge light appeared on Gilgamesh's right hand. A strange-looking sword vaguely appeared. Oh no, Gilgamesh is infuriated. In the sealed secret chamber, Yen Feng Kali and Toshiomi Inaka saw the scene and were shocked. The two of them only hoped that Gilgamesh could test Dustless's strength. It would be best if he could force him to use his relic. Who would have thought that Gilgamesh would be the first to lose his cool? As the master, Toshiomi Inaka was naturally unwilling to be the first to release his relic. This idiot Gilgamesh is infuriated. It's impossible to persuade him to come back. Toshiomi Inaka looked at the Crimson Command incantation in his hand and was frustrated. The only way was to activate the command spell to make Gilgamesh retreat. Otherwise, this idiot would definitely fight to the death with Dustless. Even if Gilgamesh took out his noble artifact, it might not be his doing. Staring at Dustless, Yen Feng Chili revealed a confused expression. He still hadn't figured out Dustless's background. What's the reason, Kiri? Toshiomi and Osaka asked calmly. This guy seems to have the same ability as Gilgamesh. If that's the case, the eighth hero spirit is too terrifying. Yen Fengili said in a low voice. Are you saying? Toshiomi's expression changed. He understood what Yen Feng Chili was trying to say. He said uncertainly, that shouldn't be possible. Gilgamesh's EA shouldn't be able to use the eighth hero spirit, this. To be honest, I think there's a need to reevaluate the eighth hero's strength. Yen Feng Chili glanced at Toshiomi and Osaka when he heard this. Then, he stared at the surveillance screen and analyzed. The eighth hero's spirit seems to be more familiar with using the king's treasure than Gilgamesh. It's really hard to guess who the imposter is, Master. Who knows, it might be Gilgamesh imitating someone else. In short, let's get the hero king to retreat. If this continues, I believe he will be defeated. Toshiomi and Osaka sighed in disappointment. He did not hesitate to activate the command spell to order Gilgamesh to retreat. Aya. Is the stray dog retreating? Dustless looked at Gilgamesh, who was suffused with a golden glow. He knew that Toshiomi and Osaka had ordered Golden Shimmer to retreat. If not, with the hero king's personality, he would definitely fight to the death. Humph. Let's end it here. In the future, just you wait. I will definitely not let you off so easily. Gilgamesh warned fiercely. His flushed face finally recovered a little. On a closer look, Gilgamesh's body was black all over. His armor was covered in black smoke. The funniest thing was that Gilgamesh's hair had also disappeared. He had become a bona fide bald head, all thanks to Dustless. Darn Tashiomi and Osaka. You want to use a laughable title like Your Majesty to appease my anger. Do you think this king is a 3-year-old child? Hero King Gilgamesh was secretly enraged. He vented all his anger on Tashiomi and Osaka. He had appeared to establish his might, but who knew that he would become a stepping stone for Dustless to rise to fame? Then, what do you plan on doing? Conquest King. Gilgamesh fled in a sorry state, leaving behind Hero King Iskandar and his master, Wilbur Velvet. Seeing Dustless look at him, the punk's face was as white as a sheet of paper. Seriously, it looks like my plan of roping you in as my subordinates has failed. Conquest King Iskandar's coarse face revealed a look of regret. How could such an extraordinary expert lower his head to be his lackey? Farewell. By the way, I'm determined to obtain the Holy Grail. The Conquest King rode the divine might wheel and left. Dustless did not plan on pursuing him. This time, they were just getting to know each other. The next time they met, it would be a merciless fight to the death. After all, there was only one Holy Grail. He had to eliminate all them satyr and their heroic spirits. Why am I the only one left after all this fighting? Lancer, who was in an intense battle with Saber, cursed. He was certain that if Saber and Dustless joined forces, he would definitely be torn to pieces. Chapter 1683. Lancer wanted to cry but had no tears. In his heart, he cursed the hero King Gilgamesh and the conqueror King Iskandar who ran away. These two bastards were shameless. Seeing that the opponent was strong, they turned around and retreated. Was this what a hero would do? Especially to the hero King Gilgamesh who was beaten up like a dog. There's a flaw. Boom, boom, boom. Saber seemed to have noticed the ripples in Lancer's heart. She held the sword with both hands and increased her strength by several levels. She launched a fierce and powerful attack, suppressing Lancer and making it difficult for him to fight back. Damn it! Lancer, who was being beaten back, cursed. He did not expect Saber to have such a sharp eye. Even in such a short moment, she realized that his heart was in a mess. Clang, 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 clang. The loud roars continued, and the volcanoes created by the collision of the weapons kept flashing. Lancer was sweating profusely. A moment of mistake would cause him to be suppressed. Bang! The invisible sword coming at him was even more powerful. Saber became braver and braver as she fought. Her attack forced Lancer to retreat. His body even smashed into the wall, leaving a broken dent. Lancer's mouth was also bleeding. Saber, you're too despicable. Lancer, who was not convinced, showed an angry expression. He pointed at Dustless who was standing and shouted, "What's the point of fighting 2 against 1? 2 against 1. Dustless heard him and showed an amused expression. He despised him and said, "Is there something wrong with your eyes? When did I sneak attack you? And do you think you can survive 2 against 1? You." Lancer opened his mouth wide and realized that he was speechless. It made sense. Dustless did not intervene in the battle from the beginning to the end. He only watched the battle as if nothing had happened and did not intervene. I'm not convinced. Lancer was too lazy to talk nonsense. It was good that Dustless did not intervene, but the psychological pressure he caused could not be ignored. When you were fighting with others, could you still concentrate with an enemy standing behind you? That's it for today. Your head will be taken by me in the future. Saber held the holy sword with both hands. Her gaze was like a torch that made people look at her differently. Ao, 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 ao. At the same time, a raging roar suddenly came. The three of them were startled and rushed towards the source of the roar. Their gazes froze. Is this a berserker? Looking at the pitch-black monster, everyone frowned. That extremely oppressive aura was suffocating. Its aura was extremely evil, and it was as terrifying as a demonic hand that had walked out from hell. Saber, be careful. That guy is coming for you. Dustless stood in front of Saber and reminded her. Coming for me. Saber was stunned. She looked at Dustless suspiciously. There seemed to be no hatred between the heroic spirits. I can only see heroic spirits without hatred, but... Dustless's eyes glowed with wisdom. What if this guy is someone you once knew? Saber was confused by Berserker's words. She stared at the furious Berserker as if she was trying to find someone who matched him in her memory. Ao, 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 ao. King Arthur, Berserker finally let out a series of angry roars. It was very hoarse. His entire body was covered in armor. That voice came from within the armor. No one would doubt that he was a demon disguised as a human. Ao, ao, ao. There was another series of inhuman roars. Then, Berserker suddenly broke the street lamp and dived towards Dustless and Saber. To be more precise, it was Saber. As for Dustless, he was completely ignored by this guy. Bang bang bang. Berserker's strength was extremely terrifying. Every step he took left a dent in the ground. He rushed in a straight line, leaving a dent in the ground. You're just a vicious dog. You're too arrogant. The demonic voice rang in Berserker's ears. This voice sounded harmless, but it made everyone's hair stand on end. Even the two masters who were hiding in the dark, Kenneth Elmoroy and Jiantong Yayan, felt a chill in their hearts. It was as if an invisible knife was placed on their necks. Woo woo, even Berserker's body stopped. He hummed twice, as if he was telling Dustless not to meddle in other people's business. Immortal spell, however, his protest was completely ignored by Dustless. He only glanced at him coldly. The chakra in his body surged wildly, and a special red halo appeared between his eyebrows. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. At the same time, there was an extremely coordinated movement from the depths of the void. Immortal spell, bright god gate. Groups of black dots, like a natural disaster, filled everyone's eyes in an instant. This exaggerated formation made people involuntarily think of a natural disaster. What is this? A piece of wood. Lancer looked up at the sky. After seeing what was falling, he immediately took the initiative to distance himself, avoiding close contact with this thing. He had a feeling that a disaster was about to befall him. Damn it, Berserker, this bastard actually didn't listen to my orders. Who told him to provoke that big shot? Jiantong Yayan, who was hiding in the dark, cursed. He did not order Berserker to attack Saber and Dustless. Who knew that this guy would take the initiative to come out and cause trouble? Now, he had angered the 8th heroic spirit. Chapter 1684. Jiantong Yayan regretted his decision. If he had known, he would not have brought Berserker, that idiot. It would have been fine if he had just pulled some aggro, but this time, he had pulled in two extremely powerful heroic spirits, Saber and Dustless. Jiantong Yayan had been watching the battle. He had seen Dustless and Saber's performance. Without any exaggeration, they could be considered the strongest heroic spirit duo. When they were alone, their combat power was invincible. Now that they were in a powerful duo, their strength was on another level. This idiot really doesn't know anything. I wanted him to cause trouble for Toshimi Nagasaka, but this guy, Jiantong Yayan, wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Countless crows descended in his heart. He cursed Berserker's 18 generations of ancestors. This guy's ability to attract aggro was definitely top-notch. We have no chance of winning. Let's just retreat. Jiantong Yayan glanced at the falling bright god gate. Jiantong Yayan looked at it with lingering fear, and then he dragged his exhausted body and retreated. Jiantong Yayan was not a scumbag. He was only able to become a master because of his father. Boom boom boom. The sky full of redwood fell. Berserker extended his speed to the limit, but the area covered by the bright god gate was too wide. There was no way to escape. He was instantly crushed. Boom 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 boom. Caw 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 caw. A sea of redwood fell on Berserker's body. His sturdy armor was all smashed, and his entire body was exposed to the air. This is a good chance. Saber's beautiful eyes flashed with passion. When she saw Berserker's armor crumble, she swung Excalibur in her hand. She was about to shatter the heavy armor on Berserker's face. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. However, good things did not last long. Just as the mask was about to shatter, Berserker's body suddenly turned into mist. He turned into a terrifying black shadow and slowly disappeared. Don't even think about escaping. Saber saw this and groaned. Just as she was about to chase, Dustless stopped her. It's useless, Saber. This guy's master ordered us to retreat. We can't catch him. Grabbing Saber's shoulder, Dustless smiled and said, and this guy's enemy isn't just us. The one who should be having a headache is Toshimi Inaka. You. Saber turned her head and looked straight into Dustless's eyes. Her beautiful face was filled with hesitation as she asked in confusion, sometimes, I wonder if you are really a heroic spirit. That's not important. In short, I'm a heroic spirit and your ally. Dustless scratched his head and answered nonchalantly. His actions and the knowledge he had accumulated far surpassed that of the so-called heroic spirits. Let's retreat, Alice. Phil is scared to death. Looking at the dazed Alice Phil not far away, Dustless slowly walked over. She was quite shocked by the bright god gate that filled the entire street. In terms of scale, it was simply too shocking. At this moment, in another direction. Such a large-scale attack, this should be his true treasured artifact. Toshimi Inaka and Yen Fong Kaylee were in a daze as they observed the red forest through a special camera. The boundless numbers made their hands cramp as they were unable to determine the exact number. In a flash, it was the next morning. Yesterday's battle had left a shadow in the hearts of many heroic spirits and Satyr, especially hero King Gilgamesh. He did not sleep the entire night as his mind was filled with Dustless's arrogant figure. There was nothing he could do about it. His domineering face had Dustless's footprints on it. It could only be said that it was an unlucky year. In the castle of the Ainsbaron family in Dongmu City, Takamiya Kissy and Takeo Kuyu had also rushed back from the distant Pacific Ocean. The former's face was filled with fatigue and his eyes were empty. In the vast Pacific Ocean, Takamiya Kissy had been chased by groups of sharks for several hours. Not bad, your performance was very good. In Takamiya Kissy's bedroom, after hearing about yesterday's battle, his listless and dispirited spirit was finally lifted. He revealed a rare smile, but it looked forced. It's just a pity that we didn't get rid of one of them. If Kissy was around, he would definitely be able to assassinate the enemy's master instead of flaunting his prowess and offending all the heroic spirits. Takeo Kuyu stared coldly at Dustless. She did not hide her dissatisfaction. This bastard had left her lover in the sea to be chased by sharks. Takamiya Kissy had been cheated badly. Satyr, forgive me for speaking bluntly, but Dustless is not wrong. There is no need for us to assassinate the enemy in such a despicable manner. With Dustless's and my abilities, we can completely wipe out the enemy's servant. It did not matter if Dustless was silent, but Saber immediately stood up to argue. She believed in the spirit of chivalry and scoffed at Takamiya Kishi's despicable methods. She despised them and even looked down on them. Saber is quite righteous. He stared at the righteous Saber with interest. He did not expect her to defend him like this. As for Takeo Kuyu, Dustless glanced at her and laughed disdainfully in his heart. When I bring Alice and Phil to catch the adulterers, I hope you can still cooperate with each other like this. Boom boom boom. At the same time, a violent tremor resounded through the sky. A low and dirty sound suddenly resounded through the entire castle of the Einsbaron family. Chapter 1685. Jeanne d'Arc, my Jeanne d'Arc, come out and see me, I am Gilles Deleuze. After hundreds of years, we finally meet. A heart-wrenching voice resounded through the sky. Looking through the window, they saw a hideous, strangely dressed, devil-like figure appeared outside the castle of the Ahrensberg family. Is this guy Castor? Saber unexpectedly frowned. She didn't expect this guy to be so arrogant. He even dared to take the initiative to attack them. His behavior was not stupid but arrogant. After all, there were two heroes here, Dustless and Saber, but Castor was alone. It seems that he is alone, and he can't wait to die. Wei Gong Qixi looked contemplative, then his gray-brown eyes swept around, staring at the large forest in front of him. He seemed to be looking for Castor's accomplice. No, it's a miracle that this guy can come to us now. I thought he would come to us last night. Dustless smiled meaningfully. Castor is a serious infatuated seed, his obsession with love is admirable, but this time, it's a pity that he is confessing his love to the wrong person. By the way, who is Jeanne d'Arc? We don't have such a person here. Wei Gong Qixi asked inexplicably. He instinctively smelled a conspiracy. Maybe someone else is framing us, trying to use us to fight Castor. That's a reasonable analysis. Wei Gong Qixi's lover Q Mamie nodded. The relationship between these two guys is too good. If I kill Wei Gong Qixi, I'm afraid Q Mamie will turn herself into a suicide bomber to kill me. Dustless glanced at the two people who were intimate. He muttered to himself, turning a deaf ear to their conversation. What he did not know was that through the gap of the door, a bright gaze was quietly staring at Wei Gong Qixi. She observed this scene with mixed feelings and disappointment. Her beloved husband was whispering to another woman. As his wife, how could Alice Phil be at ease? The Joan of Arc that guy was talking about. It's funny, but it's actually Saber. Dustless suddenly revealed an answer that made Wei Gong Qixi and Joyu Mommy flabbergasted. Do you think we're idiots? Kuya Mimi stared at Dustless indignantly. She felt that Dustless was just fooling them. It was ridiculous to say that he had mistaken her for someone else. If it wasn't Dustless talking nonsense, then it was Castor's brain twitching. Joan of Arc, my Joan of Arc, you finally came out to see me. However, the next sentence that Gilles de Rice said made Wei Gong Qixi and Kuya Mimi furious. Gilles de Rice looked at Saber, who suddenly appeared with an excited and surprised expression as he shouted loudly, Jeanne d'Arc, my Jeanne d'Arc. Who would have thought that after so many years, we would have the opportunity to meet again, my Joan of Arc? Gilles de Rice exclaimed excitedly. He almost stood up and began to dance. His eyeballs bulged outward as if they might fall out at any moment. That Castor is an idiot. Chapter 1686. Castor, please don't confuse people here. I am not the Joan of Arc you are talking about. Saber looked at Castor's crazy eyes, her nose wrinkled, she was disgusted. No, you are Joan of Arc. Castor shook his head stubbornly and said, Joan of Arc, have you forgotten me? I am Gilles le Sceau. have you forgotten me? Sorry, I don't know you. After searching her memory again, Saber was sure that she didn't know the inexplicable pervert in front of her. Damn it, damn it, damn it. My Joan of Arc doesn't recognize me. Hearing that, Castor was furious. He picked up the child he had caught before and crushed his head to vent his anger. Damn you, God. Is this all you're doing? Castor was furious. His face was extremely distorted. He threw the child's body on the ground and smashed it into a bloody foam to vent his anger, and he kept cursing the god with vicious words. You're such a crazy guy. Saber was stunned. She didn't expect that Castor would be so cruel. His actions could be described as the actions of a beast. Any normal hero wouldn't do such a thing to a child. Everyone had dignity and bottom line. Castor's cruel means were so vicious and vicious. If you continue to participate in the Holy Grail War, all the heroes will be insulted by you, so, please disappear, Castor. Saber's face turned cold as she rushed toward Castor with Excalibur in her hand, and the sword swept toward Castor's cheek. It's not that easy to kill me. When Castor saw that, he suddenly jumped back a few meters away. His crazy face showed a nostalgic smile, but it still looked so gloomy and terrible, even more frightening than his twisted face just now. If a demon who killed people like Scything Flax smiled at you like the sun, wouldn't you feel disgusted? Even Saber couldn't help but have goosebumps. Evil and crooked path, go, stop, Saber. At this moment, a stern voice stopped Saber's actions. Turning around, it was Wei Gong Kisi and Jiuyu Wumi who had rushed over, covered in dust. Master, do you have any questions? Saber looked at the smiling Takashi. She suddenly had a bad premonition. She had to remind him, Master, this guy is an evil demon, even children are not spared, we must get rid of him. After that, Saber stared at Castor again. Looking at his excited face, she knew that he was not a good person. Especially the way he stared at her, it made Saber even more disgusted. Saber, let me deal with this matter. However, Wei Gong Keisai didn't care about Saber's opinion. After all, she was just a heroic spirit. As for the child's corpse on the ground, although Wei Gong Keisai was sad, it was only for a short moment. Sacrifices were being made every day in this world. Only by obtaining the Holy Grail, the universal wishing machine, would all the disasters disappear. Castor, to be honest, this girl is your Joan of Arc. Pointing at Saber, Wei Gong Kisi's words made Castor happy, but Saber stared blankly at Wei Gong Kisi. She suddenly understood Wei Gong Kisi's plan. Master, please stop before you go too far. I can understand your eagerness to get the Holy Grail, but I can't accept such a despicable method. Saber was full of anger and said seriously, I am not Joan of Arc, my real name is Artoria Pendragon, King Arthur of ancient Britain. It doesn't matter, Saber. Takeo came to Saber's side and whispered, Saber, this is all for the Holy Grail, you also want to get it to fulfill your wish, right? So the necessary allies are indispensable. But if I cooperate with Dustless, we can defeat the other servant. Saber argued, she despised Takashi's despicable method. Not to mention pretending to be Joan of Arc, Saber couldn't help but vomit when she thought of Castor's disgusting face. We have two heroes on our side, but we have an absolute advantage, but you seem to have forgotten one thing, what if the other heroes also learn from us and form an alliance? And we just got the information that Tashiomi and Osaka and Iskandar the Conqueror have come together. The same is true for several other heroes, most of them have signs of forming an alliance with each other. In order to win the final victory, it's okay to use a despicable method, but, a voice full of disdain fell into Takeo and Saber's ears. Dustless was extremely annoyed. Using your wife as a bait to attract the enemy, this method is disgusting. This is all for justice. Takeo loudly refuted. Bullshit justice. Pursing his lips, Wuchen ridiculed even more. His words made Joyu Womi's face turn red. If it weren't for the difference in strength, she would have beaten Wuchen up to vent her anger. Using Alice Phil as a bait. Saber looked at him blankly. She didn't know what Dustless was talking about. So you still don't know? Glancing at Saber, who didn't know anything, Dustless decisively revealed Takashi's background and said, "The reason why Takashi let the three of us act alone is actually to attract the other masters to assassinate us. He and Takeo hid in the dark to snipe the other masters, but this guy's plan was destroyed by me. I threw him into the Pacific Ocean to compete with sharks in swimming." Chapter 1687. How could he be so despicable? Saber was furious. It was fine if he was despicable to the enemy, but he was so shameless to his own people. Saber couldn't stand it anymore, especially when he intended to use his wife as bait. How could there be such a despicable person in this world? "Master, I will never acknowledge your twisted justice." Saber stared at Wei Gong Kisi's back. This guy was simply shameless. "You bastard, are you trying to drive a wedge between us?" Joyu Wumi grabbed Wuchen's collar. When she was about to scold him, she suddenly felt that she was being stared at by a powerful creature. She felt a chill down her spine. It seemed that she might die in the next second. Her whole body was cold. She looked up and saw Dustless with a cold expression. His eyes were as deep as the abyss, making Joyu Mamie's soul tremble. This guy's eyes are so scary. Fear flashed through her eyes. Joyu Mamie quickly let go of Dustless's collar and took the initiative to put some distance between them. No matter what, Dustless was a heroic spirit, and she was just a mortal. The difference between them was countless dimensions. "Saber, don't listen to Dustless's nonsense. This is all a rumor he made up." Joyu Mamie glared at Dustless fiercely. Anyone could see that this guy was trying to drive a wedge between Saber and Wei Gong Kisi. No, what he said is the truth. At this moment, Wei Gong Kisi frankly admitted, just like what Dustless said, "I plan to use Dustless, Saber, and Alice Phil to attract the attention of master and servant. This guy has guts." Dustless touched his chin and couldn't help but look at Wei Gong Kisi in a new light. But, immediately after, Wei Gong Kisi lowered his voice and shouted, "I want to be a partner of justice. Some sacrifices are inevitable. Even if I kill Alice Phil with my own hands one day, I can't do anything about it." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As soon as Wei Gong Kisi finished speaking, a black shadow approached him at the speed of sound. "Damn scum. How dare you use my Joan of Arc to attract other people's firepower? Go to hell and repent." Bang! Wei Gong Kisi was sent flying with a single punch, and even a few of his teeth were knocked out. His face was slightly sunken in, and there was a clear red fist imprint on it. And the person who attacked Wei Gong Kisi was Castor. Well done. Dustless gave a thumbs up to Castor. It was the first time he thought that the homicidal maniac was so cute. "Which side are you on, you bastard? Be clear about your position." Kuyumami's mouth twitched, and black lines appeared on her forehead. She loudly reprimanded Dustless, "Remember that you are Alice Field's servant, and Alice Field is Wei Gong Kisi's wife." "So what? That's their relationship. It has nothing to do with me. Although Saber and I are on the same side, it's hard to be loyal to such a master. It's fine if he plotted against others, but even Saber and I were plotted against by Wei Gong Kisi. Forgive me for being unable to accept this." Pfft. Kuyumami almost vomited blood when she heard that. She pointed at Dustless while trembling. She didn't expect that there was someone in the world who could be shameless to this point. Wei Gong Kisi planned to do this, but before all of this could be implemented, Wei Gong Kisi was thrown into the sea by Dustless to play a swimming competition with the man-eating sharks in the Pacific Ocean. Bang bang bang. Wei Gong Kisi, who was caught by Castor, was beaten violently. The power of a hero spirit was incomparable. With just a few punches, Wei Gong Keisai's cheeks were badly mutilated. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At that moment, a ray of light rushed toward Castor's side, and a small foot covered with light hit Castor's ferocious face with full force. Lightspeed kick. Boom boom boom. That merciless kick sent Castor flying more than 10 meters away. He glanced at Wu Qin and Wei Gong Qixi fiercely, and then glanced at Saber reluctantly, and then he ran away awkwardly. It's not that Dustless wanted to save Wei Gong Keisai, but after that guy died, Saber would inevitably disappear. This guy is very cruel. I'm afraid that the recent child serial murder case reported in the news was done by him. Wei Gong Keisai stood up with an ugly face. He originally wanted to pull Castor into his camp. If the three servants joined forces, the Holy Grail would be easy to get, but who would have thought that this guy was so unreasonable? He beat him up without saying a word. Not to mention his teeth, in the end, he didn't even get a strand of hair. The most unbearable thing for Wei Gong Keisai was that he was beaten black and blue by Castor. Soon, someone will clean up Castor. Dustless stared blankly at the disappearing Castor. He still remembered that in the original work, Enosaka Toshimi joined forces with the church and other masters to suppress Castor, and the final reward was an extra command seal. But in fact, it was just a simple trap. Enosaka Toshimi and the church secretly colluded with each other. The essential purpose was to let the other masters fight, and in the end, the hero king would solve the problem. The command seal naturally belonged to Enosaka Toshimi, but the hero king disdained to deal with Castor, so Castor was killed by Saber. In the end, Enosaka Toshimi didn't even get a strand of hair, but gradually drifted away from the hero king. Therefore, in Wei Gong Keisai's plan, there was no script for Dustless to appear. Now that he was willing to take the initiative to participate in this hunt, it was for the best. Damn it, Lancer. Why didn't you join forces with that golden archer and berserker to kill the 8th heroic spirit and those two guys, Saber? Bastard, who gave you the confidence to do that? In the luxurious apartment, Kenneth was angrily throwing a tantrum. The handsome man who was kneeling on one knee in front of him was his servant, Lancer. Facing the angry Kenneth Elmoroy, Lancer chose to remain silent. Lord. I will definitely defeat those two guys fair and square and help you obtain the Holy Grail. Please believe me. I swear in the name of Delumito Odine. Lancer swore with a serious face. Unfortunately, his master Kenneth did not buy it. Let me make it clear. This is something that should be done. Do you still need to swear? Are you saying that if you don't swear, you won't help me obtain the Holy Grail? Watch your tone, Lancer. Kenneth snorted coldly. Judging from his tone, he was treating Lancer as a useless tool. Kenneth's eyes became colder and colder. If he could, he would immediately change to a heroic spirit with a more flexible mind. Lancer, this guy, was getting more and more unpleasant to the eye. He was extremely annoying. Moreover, his thoughts were too stubborn. It was fine as long as he could obtain the final victory. It did not matter even if he had to use despicable tricks. In Kenneth's eyes, the so-called chivalry spirit was just bullsh*t. You can talk about the chivalry spirit with others, but would others abide by this ridiculous rule with you? It was still a sneak attack. Ah, Lancer, I really pity you. Your master is very similar to that guy Wei Gong Qixi. He would do anything to achieve his goal. A frivolous voice suddenly sounded. Kenneth and Lancer were stunned at the same time. They looked towards the direction of the voice at the same time. Outside the window, there was actually a figure floating. It's you. That smiling face of Wu Chen's fell into the two people's eyes and was extremely asking for a beating. After that, Kenneth and Lancer both exclaimed. Among them, Kenneth's expression was the most interesting. He said furiously, "Impossible, I have set up a lot of stupid thing. Do you think those tricks to trick children will work on heroic spirits? No wonder an idiot like you was killed by Wei Gong Kisi's plot. You're so stupid." Dustless sneered loudly. He snorted at the barrier that Kenneth had set up. Chapter 1689. Dustless was not looking down on Kenneth, but he was too naive. Although a magician was powerful, there was a huge difference between a human and a hero spirit. If the difference could be easily made up, why would a hero spirit be needed in a battle? Is this fella here to provoke me? Kenneth's eyeballs moved quickly as his face turned serious. Dustless was coming at them aggressively. It seemed like they had no other choice but to fight him. "Your Majesty, let me have a fight to the death with this guy." Lancer stared at Wu Qin with burning eyes. His eyes were filled with a burning desire to fight. However, Kenneth, who was hesitant, ignored him. "Idiot, don't you know there's a saying that there must be something wrong if something is out of the ordinary? Or are all hero spirits so stupid? There must be a trap for him to come to us." Kenneth stared at Lancer angrily and cursed him for being stupid. "No, we can't fight him. We must drag it out. This fella must have set a trap for us since he came to us. Wouldn't we be idiots if we step on the landmine without hesitation?" Kenneth shook his head decisively after pondering for more than 10 seconds. He smiled proudly as he stared at Dustless. "I know what you're planning to do. Sebra was stabbed by Lancer and she can't use her arm anymore. Her combat power will be greatly reduced. You came to us in such a hurry because you want to break the curse on Lancer's relic, right? Yo, it's a miracle. You idiot, you're smart." Dustless was actually mocking Kenneth. "But you're such a despicable person. Will it work if you reject me? You're so naive that I'll think that you're a kid. You want to force me to fight? Don't even think about it." Kenneth rejected him decisively, ignoring Lancer's burning desire to fight. He was sure that Dustless came to him and there must be a trap for him. He would fall into the trap if he challenged him. Hee. It's good that we don't fight. Actually, compared to violent fights, I prefer things that men like to do. Dustless suddenly laughed sinisterly and teased, "Oh right, I forgot to tell you just now. Your fiancée, Sora Nazirii Sophia, is crying and begging you to marry her. TSK, if you refuse, then such a beautiful woman will be mine. You took Sola away. Bastard. Just when did the heroic spirit summoned by the Holy Grail War become so shameless and perverted? Damned bastard." Kenneth trembled as he pointed at Dustless. His vision turned black, and he almost passed out from anger. He stared straight at Dustless. The impact of these words was no less than being struck by lightning. As a heroic spirit, you are an out-and-out hero. You even used such a despicable and ugly method. Kenneth, who had regained his senses, was furious. He cursed Dustless in his heart for being so shameless. This bastard kept saying that he and Wei Gong Kisi were despicable, but they even kidnapped a hostage. Who could be more despicable than Dustless? TSK, this really has nothing to do with me. It was Wei Gong Kisi who did it. Dustless continued to laugh sinisterly and exerted pressure. He even showed an expression that said, "Don't blame me." He also pushed all the responsibility to Wei Gong Kisi. The so-called protagonist was actually used as a scapegoat. "Master of Lancer, since you're not going to fight, then I'll retreat. She's called Sola, right? That beautiful woman is still waiting for me to spend the night with her. She's crazy about such a handsome heroic spirit like me." Dustless showed a strange and wretched expression that all men understood. Then, he disappeared from Kenneth's sight. Plop. Kenneth, who couldn't take the blow, fainted. The moment he closed his eyes, Sola Nazili Sophia's sobbing face suddenly appeared in his mind, as well as Dustless, who was unscrupulously abusing her. Kenneth immediately stood up and kicked Lancer in annoyance. He roared furiously, "Damn it, why are you still standing here, you idiot? Hurry up and chase after her. Do you want to see another green hat on my head?" Kenneth roared in a deranged manner. He even cursed. Lancer's reaction to battle could be said to be perfect, but when it came to this kind of matter that concerned a man's dignity, he became nervous. Green hat. Lancer was stunned for a moment. Then, he came to a realization after thinking about it carefully. He promised solemnly, "My lord, don't worry. Leave Madam's safety to me. Also, you don't have to worry. Madam will definitely not be charmed by that guy. Although he's more handsome than you, I believe that with your charisma, you'll definitely capture Madam's heart." Before leaving, Lancer suddenly advised Kenneth out of kindness. However, the latter only stared at Lancer blankly. That absent-minded gaze was obviously questioning. "You and Dustless are purposely attacking me, right?" Caw caw caw. Lancer stabbed the transparent tempered glass with his spear and looked at Dustless's disappearing figure from afar. He decisively gave chase at full speed. "You're quite fast. You've caught up in such a short time." Dustless turned his head and stared at the black figure that was gradually closing in on him. His cheeks no longer had the frivolous look from before. Instead, it was replaced by endless coldness. Damn that guy. Wei Gong Keisai doesn't deserve to be a magician. He even used such disgusting methods. I must personally chop him into 8 pieces to vent my anger. Kenneth clenched his fists tightly and gritted his teeth as he growled. He was really disgusted by Dustless. He pushed all the blame onto Wei Gong Keisai. The smell of gunpowder still lingered in the air. Dustless opened his eyes and looked at Sola. Her body was covered in blood and flesh. Her abdomen was also badly mutilated, and the finger-sized wound was clearly visible. A heroic spirit really knows how to enjoy life. 2 silhouettes walked out from the dark corner. Looking sideways, it was Wei Gong Kisi, who was wearing black clothes, and his assistant, Takeo Joyu. She's a scourge. Wei Gong Kisi glanced at Sola, who was unwilling to die, and said expressionlessly, "If you want to resent someone, you can only resent yourself for being Kenneth's fiancé. Do you think you can fool me with that ridiculous trick of yours?" Wei Gong Kisi. Lifting his eyelids, Dustless stared at Wei Gong Kisi's cold face and sneered, "Even if she wasn't Kenneth's fiancé, you still wouldn't let her go. For a person who was distorted by the so-called righteous companions, he wouldn't care how many people were sacrificed in order to achieve his goal." Anyway, in Wei Gong Kisi's eyes, these were necessary sacrifices. Sola. At the same time, a sorrowful cry sounded. Looking at the direction where the sound came from, it was Lancer and Kenneth. Damned Wei Gong Kisi, Sola didn't participate in this war. Why did you do this to her? Kenneth asked with red eyes, looking like a gambler who had lost everything. Don't think that I don't know. Although you have signed a contract with Lancer, the magic that sustains Lackner is provided by this woman. She can only blame herself for this. Looking at Kenneth's eyes that were filled with hatred, Wei Gong Kisi answered frankly. Lackner, I'll leave that heroic spirit to you. Get rid of these eyesores for me. Kenneth roared crazily. Dustless left Lackner to him and he pounced on Wei Gong Kisi. He couldn't wait to die together with him. I will definitely complete your mission, Lord. Lancer also stared at Wu Qin in an unfriendly manner. A shocking viciousness occasionally flashed across his eyes. Bring it on, Lancer. This is your last performance. Try your best to dance. Don't disappoint me. Dustless, who was sitting on the chair, smiled. He supported his chin with his right hand and looked at Lancer with an expectant expression. As you wish. Lancer's gaze froze and he stared at Dustless for a while. Then, he turned into a straight black shadow and charged over. Meanwhile, Wei Gong, Kisi and Kenneth were entangled in a fight. Chapter 1691. The dense cold light was coming at him at an extremely fast speed. Within a few seconds, Lancer, who was wielding his relic, had stabbed hundreds of times. Unfortunately, Dustless seemed to be omniscient as he was able to avoid the fatal attacks every time. God is really ruthless. Dustless took the initiative to communicate with Lancer as his body floated backward. Don't talk nonsense. Just bring it on. Lancer's eyes were as deep as the abyss as he held the crimson spear in his hand. Nonsense. Don't you think fate is cruel? God is really cruel and heartless to let the perfect me meet you who is full of flaws. Dustless sighed with extreme narcissism and looked at Lancer with eyes full of pity. You're too much. Hearing this, Lancer waved the spear in his hand again. The sharp tip of the spear pounced toward Dustless's head. Elemental transformation. Dustless's body was covered in a bright golden light as he did not hesitate to use his best skill. Pfft. The spear fiercely pierced through Wu Chen's head, penetrating between his eyebrows. However, the strange thing was that there was no blood flowing out of the wound. Moreover, the feeling was extremely strange. It gave people the feeling that they had hit the air. What kind of hero spirit is this guy? Lancer quickly pulled out the relic that was pierced through Dustless's head. In an instant, the wound was healed at the speed of light. It seemed like nothing had happened at all. He stared at Dustless cautiously. His bottomless eyes were as terrifying as the abyss. Nature's attraction. He grabbed the air and a strong gravitational force exploded. An invisible force distorted the surrounding environment. Wherever the gravitational force reached, the laws of physics would lose their effect and everything would float. Lancer was the same. Get over here. With a loud shout, the chakra in Dustless's body increased the output by a few times. Lancer, who was initially struggling, suddenly lost control of his body. You're courting death. A ferocious look appeared on Lancer's face. He simply stopped resisting and used the inertia of gravity to lunge at Dustless. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Lancer waved his spear with all his might, and the cold light scattered. It looked like Dustless's head was going to be pierced into a beehive. Lancer's idea was extremely crafty. There was no way to escape. No matter which direction he dodged in, he would be torn apart by the cold light. Die! Lancer seemed to have seen through Dustless's miserable death and revealed a victorious smile. Bang bang bang. At the same time, a majestic repulsive force suddenly broke out of his body. Lancer, who was caught off guard, was also affected. His proud face instantly turned tragic. Shinra Tensei. Lancer's body was sent flying by the super-strong repulsive force. Caw caw caw. The hard wall was cracked by him, and there was even a dent in it. Lancer's mouth was stained with fresh blood. This guy can actually control gravity and repulsive force at the same time. Lancer wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His whole body was in severe pain, as if he was being pricked by needles. He had to gasp for breath just to move his body slightly. It was extremely strenuous. If an ordinary person was hit, they would have been turned into a bloody pulp. TSK, your body is very strong. His eyes moved around Lancer. The bones in this guy's body were faintly showing signs of falling apart. It could be said that it was a miracle that he could still stand up. You're still far from defeating me. After taking a breath of cold air, the pain in Lancer's body eased a little. He stared at Dustless with a burning gaze. There was no sign of discouragement on his handsome face. I really don't understand people like you. You know that the difference in strength is like heaven and earth, but you still refuse to give up in the end. A tenacious spirit like perseverance can't make up for the difference in strength. Dustless shook his head to express his confusion. At the same time, a blue light appeared on his fingertips. Void flash. Boom. 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 The energy ball was flicked out by Dustless's finger and instantly annihilated Lancer. There was a violent explosion. Lancer did not even have the time to scream before he was eroded by the high-density energy ball. Plop. Lancer lay in the crater, his entire body charred beyond recognition. The high temperature from the void flash explosion had burned him to the point where he didn't even look like a human anymore. He was still panting, but his consciousness had already fainted. Let me give you the final blow. Looking at Lancer, who was howling in pain, a big shiny sword appeared in Dustless's hand. The light that was reflected was accompanied by a scorching attack. It could easily burn the skin of a human with just a touch. Damn trash, Lancer, this useless trash, trash. It's fine if you can't help me at this time, but you actually want me to help you out. Useless trash. On the other side, Kenneth cursed fiercely. He did not expect Lancer to be so useless. After being beaten up by Dustless, he was coldly suppressed without even having the strength to retaliate. Get lost. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Kenneth suddenly got rid of Wei Gong Kisi and turned to Jiu Mami, who had the weakest strength. He quickly grabbed her and subdued her in a flash. That perverted heroic spirit, if you don't want this guy to die, quickly stay away from Lancer. Kenneth shouted at Dustless. He did not want to lose, nor did he want to withdraw from this Holy Grail war in advance. If Lancer died, it would mean that everything was over. Kenneth did not want to leave in grief. Chapter 1692. Staring at Dustless with a ferocious look, Kenneth glared back with a stern expression. However, Kenneth sadly discovered that although he was angry, the consequences weren't serious at all. Dustless stepped on Lancer's body and looked at him frivolously. Miss Woomy, you should be very happy to die for justice, right? Dustless stared at the pale-faced Jiu Woomy and sent Kenneth to hell with one sentence. Wei Gong Jishi's expression changed when he heard that. His eyes flickered, and no one knew what he was thinking. He remained silent. Ha! Kenneth was hit hard by Dustless's words and said angrily, You bastard, this is your master's mistress. Can you bear the consequences of her death? No, no. Shaking his finger a few times, Dustless smiled indifferently and said, I think Miss Woomy will be very willing to sacrifice herself. Jiu Woomy glared at Dustless and looked at him angrily. She stuttered for a moment and didn't know how to answer. If she could live, who would choose to die? Moreover, Jiu Woomy still hoped that after Alice Phil disappeared, she would become the official mistress and live the fairy tale life of her dreams. It seems like you don't want to. Kenneth heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that. Joy appeared on his face. He was really afraid that Jiu Woomy would say something like, I'm not afraid of death. I must kill Lancer, or something like that. Dustless, kill Lancer. At this moment, Wei Gong Jishi ordered with a cold face. Are you crazy? This guy is your secret lover. Are you going to ignore her life and death now? Kenneth shouted in disbelief. He must have investigated Wei Gong Jishi's matter clearly. The secret relationship between Jiu Woomy and Wei Gong Jishi naturally couldn't escape Kenneth's eyes. Jiu Woomy lowered her head with a complicated expression. Her eyes were filled with crystal tears. Swish swish swish. Suddenly, an unexpected cold light attacked. Dustless was stunned. The moment he turned around, a cold light attacked his heart. Poochie. A blood-red hole appeared where Dustless's heart was. His whole body was pierced through by the cold light. If his heart was destroyed, even a heroic spirit would die. This sudden scene caused everyone to be stunned. They all stared at the figure behind Dustless in unison, and an unexpected figure appeared before their eyes. It was Lancer, who was severely exhausted. Lancer actually sneak attacked me. Your knighthood spirit should be very valuable. You shouldn't do such a despicable thing like sneak attack. Dustless stared blankly at Lancer, who had a painful expression. Ha 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 ha. At this moment, an unusually proud laugh came from Kenneth's mouth. He was beaming with joy. You bunch of idiots. With Lancer's character, he definitely wouldn't do something like a sneak attack. However, pointing at the command incantation on his arm, Kenneth laughed and said, "But if I were to use the Lancer to pretend to be dead and attack you, everything would be different." Master, are you that despicable? Lancer's face was filled with pain. Looking at Kenneth, who was laughing proudly, he did not hide the disgust deep in his eyes. Shut up, you idiot. You've ruined my reputation, and now you've caused Soulless death. Do you still dare to blame me, you useless piece of trash servant? Moreover, I let you kill this guy. You should thank me. Kenneth laughed crazily, completely ignoring the knighthood. The masters of the Holy Grail War would not follow this idiotic and ridiculous fallacy. Swish swish swish. A straight ray of light cut through the dark and oppressive environment, turning into a sharp lightsaber and went straight for Koni's, who was gloating. Poochie. This ray of light instantly pierced through his abdomen, and a hole the size of a human head appeared. His disgusting laughter also disappeared in an instant. Who did this? Ignoring the piercing pain all over his body, Kenneth looked for the initiator of the sneak attack. Ah. The culprit is right in front of you. What are you looking at? A lazy voice was heard. Kenneth immediately followed the voice and skimmed over. To his astonishment, it was Dustless. You should be dead. Your wound has healed. Bullshit. Kenneth looked as if he had seen a ghost. He screamed in a panic, "That's impossible. I ordered Lancer to destroy your heart. Destroying the heart will kill. That's for ordinary masters and servant. Don't forget, this guy is the 8th heroic spirit that shouldn't have appeared. His way of existence is special and unreasonable. The law that applies to ordinary people naturally doesn't apply to Dustless." Takeo Juyu coldly glanced at Kenneth, who was stunned. She did not hide her sneer. Damn it. Sensing that his life was fading away, Kenneth was like a mad dog. When he wanted to drag Takeo Juyu down with him, it was already too late. Bang bang bang. A few shots were fired consecutively. Kenneth's head was shot into blood, leaving behind a few huge holes. He and Lancer finally disappeared together forever. With Lancer's death, the curse left on Saber's arm also disappeared. We finally got rid of Lancer. It's a success. Let's go back, Takeo Juyu. Wei Gong Kisi showed a rare smile and took the initiative to greet Takeo Juyu. He wanted to give her a warm hug, but who knew that this guy only nodded coldly. Although they won this war, Wei Gong Kisi also lost the people's hearts because of it. Saber walked in front of Dustless and smiled sincerely. Then, she bowed solemnly. The curse on my arm has disappeared. You killed Lancer, right? No need to thank me. It's just a small matter. We don't owe each other anything from now on. Dustless didn't mind. He had a good impression of Saber. Besides, Saber was injured because of his own carelessness. Ta 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 ta. At the same time, the sound of hurried footsteps suddenly came from the corridor. Looking up, a flawless face and straight white hair invaded his eyes first. Looking closely, it was Alice Phil. The Church of Holy Light wants us to stop the Holy Grail War immediately and kill Satyr temporarily, Alice Phil said happily. After completing the mission, we'll receive a command charm. What's going to happen can't be stopped. Dustless sighed. Then, he asked curiously, I heard that the person who came to inform us is someone from the church. Is it Yen Feng Qi? In the previous battle, his assassin was killed. I remember that he applied for the church's protection. It's not Yen Feng Qi, but the person who came to inform us is related to him. Alice Phil shook her head and gave an unexpected answer. It's his father, Yen Feng Qi. I heard from Satyr that he's the supervisor of the Holy Grail War. Saber nodded slightly and didn't suspect anything. Then, she explained, since it was sent in the name of the church, there shouldn't be any shady dealings behind this mission. I guess all the masters will participate. Even if they can't get the command charm, they don't want the enemy to get it. Supervisor. Are you talking about that old man, Yen Feng Qi? In fact, he's already in cahoots with Toshiomi Nagasaka. Dustless curled his lips and said disdainfully, that old man is in cahoots with Toshiomi Nagasaka. As for the supervisor, it's even more ridiculous. Yen Feng Qi, the son of Yen Feng Qi, is participating in this Holy Grail War. All fairness has become unfairness. Also, Dustless's face fell. He sneered in his heart, that old man has a bunch of command charms. He can give them to whoever he wants. He's a big problem. I might as well kill him. Since the word fairness had lost its meaning, then the supervisor, Yen Feng Qi, had also lost its meaning. In the dead of night, Dustless's clone secretly snuck into the church and secretly killed off Yen Feng Qi. Yen Feng Qi was present during this, but he couldn't do anything against Dustless. He could only watch helplessly. Chapter 1694. Bang bang bang. There were a few crisp sounds coming from Toshiomi Enosaka's house. Toshiomi Enosaka lost his usual calmness, his face was ferocious, and he even smashed some delicate porcelain in anger. Looking at the fragments all over the ground, even so, the raging flames in Toshiomi Enosaka's eyes were still burning, he still couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. Yen Fengli was dead. This sudden news hit Toshiomi Enosaka a lot. Yen Fengli was one of his important allies. With a special relationship with the church, he could also cheat, but now, in short, Toshiomi Enosaka was very angry now. Master, an old-fashioned, emotionless voice invaded his ears. Toshiomi Enosaka immediately changed his face. As a noble magician, it was necessary to pay attention to elegance at all times. Kaylee. I am deeply saddened by the death of your father. Toshiomi Enosaka showed a painful and sad look. After all, it was his important ally, it was normal to be sad when he died. But, Toshiomi Enosaka continued, I hope you can continue to maintain the relationship between the church and the Enosaka family, so that it will be good for both of us. I will, master. Yen Fengli still nodded with no expression. In fact, he didn't have any sadness or tears for Yen Fengli's death. Not even a trace of tears. As for the reason, Yen Fengli didn't know. One day later. What, you ordered us to kill Castor? In the villa of the Ahrensburg family, Dustless stared at Kimiko Kissy and Alice Phil, his head was buzzing. He had already killed Yen Feng and Li Zheng, so this boring mission should be over. Is there anything wrong? Kimiko Kissy looked at Dustless's eyes and asked faintly. Dustless raised his eyebrows when he saw this. He thought to himself, it seems that the people of the church have sealed off the death of Yen Feng Rizheng. It should be Toshimi and Yen Feng Kaylee who did it. These two guys are really shameless. They actually want to get something for nothing. Since Yen Fengrijing was dead, the quest reward of killing Satyr and obtaining a command seal was obviously not going to be fulfilled. However, Tashiomi Inaka and Yen Fengrijing were still trying to trick everyone into fighting Satyr. What else could it be other than trying to gain something without risking anything? Not only that, the overseer of the Holy Grail War had been killed. This meant that all the illegal activities in the past had become legal. All sorts of crazy methods could be used. Anyway, this time, it's going to be a luxurious hunting feast. Dustless and Saber are responsible for dealing with Castor, and I'll secretly snipe the other masters. Wei Gong Kisi's eyes lit up. Since the masters chose to stop the Holy Grail War and temporarily kill Castor, then this mission must gather all the masters. Wei Gong Kisi could also hide in the dark and kill them one by one. Despicable. Saber snorted with dissatisfaction.